Okay, so get this. You sent us research on the Bloody Benders, and I gotta say, I'm already hooked.
Yeah, they're a fascinating case.
It's 1870s Kansas, right? Like, picture it, vast prairies,
Yeah.
tough pioneers, and this family running a seemingly innocent inn, but
Right.
what's going on under the floorboards? I think we all know.
Let's just say you don't want to end up as one of their guests.
Absolutely not.
You know, one of the things that really strikes me about this case is how perfectly it illustrates the dark underbelly of the Wild West.
Yeah.
We've all heard the romantic stories, but the reality for many people living on the frontier was harsh.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Isolation, extreme weather, the constant threat of bandits, disappearing on the trail was sadly not uncommon.
It makes you think about the Bender's choice of location even more. It's almost hidden away deliberately out of sight.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
It's not just about opportunity.
no.
There's this level of premeditation here that I find chilling.
Oh,
It's almost like they were creating a stage for their gruesome play.
right.
And the fact that the family dynamic itself, Pama, Kate, and John,
Yeah.
it's shrouded in mystery, just adds to that unsettling feeling.
It really does. Like, were Kate and John siblings, spouses, or something else entirely? The sources are surprisingly vague on that point.
Yeah, and to add to that unsettling feeling, they specifically chose a spot for their inn where it couldn't be seen by neighbors. So, that just adds another layer of premeditation to their crimes.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack their MO a little bit. Luring travelers in with, offers of food and lodging, only to bash them over the head with a hammer while they're sitting at the dinner table.
The hammer itself is such a fascinating choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's personal, it's brutal, and it kind of implies this level of rage. And then you got the trapdoor,
Yeah.
dropping their victims into the cellar below. Efficient, yes, but also incredibly dehumanizing.
Uh-huh.
It's like they were erasing their victims from existence.
It's straight out of a nightmare. And the cellar itself, we're not talking about a cozy basement here. This was a pit of death, literally. The thought of those unsuspecting travelers falling into that darkness.
And to think that they were living right above it all. The constant presence of death, the smell, it just paints this horrifying picture of their mental state.
So we know there were at least 11 confirmed victims, but I'm guessing the real number is probably much higher.
That's the grim reality of cases like this, right? Many travelers on the frontier simply vanish without a trace.
Right.
So it's possible that we'll never truly know the Bender's full body count.
One victim in particular, Dr. William York, his case seems to be the one that really pushed the investigation forward.
I think it was his brother, Colonel Alexander York,
Yeah.
that really made a difference.
Right.
He was a prominent figure in the state, and he wasn't going to let his brother's disappearance go unanswered.
Of course not.
Good for him.
Yeah, and it's tragic in any case, but there's something about the discovery of little Marianne Longcourt buried with her father that is just
Oh, yeah.
awful.
Absolutely. An 18-month-old child. It's a detail that gripped the nation, fueled the outrage, and really cemented the Bender's place in true crime infamy.
So how did suspicion finally land on this seemingly ordinary family?
Well, it's a combination of observations and plain bad luck for the Benders.
Okay.
A local cattle driver, Billy Toll, noticed that their livestock was abandoned, which was highly unusual.
That's a detail that wouldn't have stood out in a bustling city, but on the frontier.
Exactly. Everyone knew their neighbors' routines, their animals.
Uh-huh.
Something was clearly off.
Right.
And then you have the account of Leroy Dick, who described a smell of death coming from the Bender property.
Wow.
I-
Like a smell so bad that even seasoned frontiers folk were alarmed.
It's a chilling detail,
That's saying something.
and one that I think really speaks to the brutality of these crimes.
Mhm.
This wasn't just a quick robbery gone wrong. These killings were personal.
You mentioned that thousands flocked to the site after the bodies were discovered. What was it about this case that captured the public's imagination so intensely?
Well, I think it's the juxtaposition of the mundane and the horrific.
Mm-hmm.
This seemingly normal family living in a quiet corner of Kansas and then committing these heinous acts right under everyone's noses.
Right.
It shattered the illusion of safety and exposed this darkness that many people didn't want to believe existed.
It's like something out of a Gothic novel, and then the fact that they escaped before they could be caught just adds fuel to the fire.
Definitely created a sense of unease,
Yeah.
a fear that they might strike again. And that fear, coupled with the public's thirst for justice, turned the Bloody Benders into a national obsession.
Yeah.
Their story tapped into our deepest fears about the unknown. about the monsters that might be lurking right next door.
You know, reading through all this research, I'm struck by how easily the Benders were able to blend in. It makes you wonder, how well can we ever truly know those around us?
It's a question that haunts this case, and one that I think we'll be grappling with as we dive deeper into the Benders story.
Yeah.
But for now, let's shift our focus to the investigation itself. What did authorities uncover about the Benders' past, their potential motives, and the possibility of a wider criminal network at play?
All right, let's get into that. This is where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Let's go. So, we've got these intriguing bits and pieces about their lives before Kansas.
Right.
It's like trying to assemble a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
It really makes you wonder if they were deliberately obscuring their past, almost as if they were preparing for this new life of crime.
Right. It would be surprising, assuming they were involved in these other criminal activities, a clean slate would be essential.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about Kate.
Yeah.
She's described as charismatic, even beautiful. But there's something unsettling about her alleged spiritualist practices.
Oh, yeah. Was it a genuine belief or a way to manipulate people or a little bit of both?
It's hard to say.
It's interesting that even in the Wild West, people were drawn to the occult.
Well, it speaks to, I think, a universal human desire.
Sure.
This need to connect with something beyond ourselves, to find answers in the face of the unknown.
Yeah.
But in the Benders' case, it seems like this fascination was twisted into something much more sinister.
And what about John? He's always kind of lurking in the background, the strong, silent type.
Right.
What was his role in all of this?
I think he's often depicted as the muscle, the enforcer.
Okay.
But I think we need to be careful about painting him as simply a brute, right? The sources suggest he was present for most, if not all, of the killings.
Right.
And that requires a certain level of acceptance, if not outright enthusiasm.
It's chilling to think about, them carrying out these murders and then just going about their daily lives as if nothing had happened.
And remember, they were living right above those bodies, eating meals, sleeping. It's almost unimaginable.
So let's talk about the theory that they were part of a larger criminal network.
Okay.
Horse thieves operating across state lines. It adds a whole new dimension to the case, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It suggests a level of organization and cold-bloodedness that goes beyond impulsive acts of violence.
Right.
It really paints a picture of the Benders as calculating criminals, not just opportunistic killers.
But if they were just trying to eliminate witnesses to protect their horse thieving operation, why go to the trouble of burying the bodies?
That's a good question.
Wouldn't it have been easier to just make them disappear on the vast prairie?
Yeah. Perhaps it was about minimizing the risk of discovery. Or maybe there was an element of ritual to it. Remember Kate's alleged spiritualism?
Oh, right.
Adds a layer of complexity we can't ignore.
Right. It's true. We keep coming back to this idea of the Benders as more than just simple criminals.
Yeah.
There's something darker, more unsettling about them.
I think that's why their story continues to fascinate us, even after all these years. It's not just about the violence, it's about the mystery.
Right.
What drove them to commit these acts? What were their true beliefs? And perhaps most importantly, what became of them after they vanished?
Speaking of vanishing, let's talk about Samuel Merrick, the horse thief, who claimed to have crossed paths with the Benders after they fled Kansas.
Okay.
His account is pretty wild.
It is, and I can see why it was initially dismissed.
Yeah.
Law enforcement was focused on hard evidence, not tales of occult gatherings.
Sure.
But there are elements of Merrick's story that I find compelling.
Like what?
Well, he claims that the Benders joined up with this cult-like group in Texas.
Okay.
Obsessed with the occult, led by this kind of charismatic figure.
He claims that the Benders joined a cult.
That's what he says, and not just any occult group.
Yeah.
Merrick goes into detail about animal sacrifices, chanting, and a leader who claimed to have the power to control the weather.
Control the weather. Okay, even for me, that's pushing it a bit. But
Yeah.
then again, we are talking about the Wild West, a time and place where people believed in all sorts of things.
Exactly, and remember, we already have this element of the occult swirling around Kate Bender, so it's not a huge leap to imagine them being drawn to a group that promised power, belonging, and maybe even a sense of purpose.
That's an interesting way to put it, because if their initial killings in Kansas were about more than just robbery or silencing witnesses, what if they were some kind of initiation?
Right, then we're looking at a much darker, more disturbing picture.
Yeah.
One where their violence wasn't just about greed or survival, but about something far more sinister.
Okay, I'm officially creeped out. So what happened to this alleged cult? Did they just disappear into the desert like the Benders?
Unfortunately, that's where the trail gets murky.
Yeah.
Concrete evidence about this group is practically non-existent.
Right.
Merrick's account is all we have, and even that's based on his own experiences and hearsay.
So we're left with this tantalizing glimpse into something truly unsettling, but no way to confirm whether it's true or not.
Exactly, and that, I think, is what makes this part of the story so compelling.
Yeah.
It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge, the possibility that there are dark corners of history that may never be fully illuminated.
So what do you think? Were the Benders just cold-blooded killers who got lucky and escaped? Or were they something more? Were they acolytes of some hidden evil carrying out their dark rituals under the vast western sky?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that we'll be exploring in more depth as we delve into the final chapter of the Bender saga. But for now, I think it's time to step back and consider the broader context of this case.
Okay.
What does the story of the Bloody Benders tell us about the Wild West, about human nature, and about the enduring power of mystery?
Okay, I'm ready to dive into that. Let's see what conclusions we can draw from this truly bizarre and unsettling case.
Yeah.
So we're left with this image of the Benders, like, just disappearing into the shadowy world of occult practices.
Yeah, it's a far cry from that simple family run-in we started with.
Makes you think about how easily evil can blend in, especially in a place like the Wild West, where everyone was a stranger to some degree.
Exactly. The frontier drew people from all walks of life, each with their own secrets and ambitions.
Right.
It created a climate where someone like Kate Bender, with her charisma and her alleged spiritual powers, could easily exploit the vulnerabilities of others.
And, if we entertain the idea that their killings were connected to this occult group, it adds this chilling layer of premeditation to their crimes.
It does. It shifts their motive from simple greed or self-preservation to something much more disturbing.
Right.
And the fact that we may never know the full extent of their involvement with this group, it just adds to the mystery.
It's like we're working with a puzzle, but some of the most crucial pieces are missing.
Yeah.
We can speculate, but we may never have the complete picture.
That's the nature of history, isn't it? We're always piecing together these fragments, trying to make sense of the past.
Yeah.
But sometimes the most intriguing stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
It makes me think about the impact this case had on the community, to find out that this family you thought you knew was capable of such horrific acts.
Oh, yeah, it would have shattered their sense of security, their trust in their neighbors.
Yes.
And the fact that the Benders were never caught would have left this lingering fear, this sense that justice was never truly served.
And it becomes a cautionary tale almost. A reminder that evil can lurk beneath the surface of any community, no matter how peaceful it may seem.
It also, I think, challenges our assumptions about the Wild West. We often romanticize this period of history.
Yeah, we do.
Focusing on the adventure and the spirit of independence.
Right.
But the reality was often far more brutal and complex.
Yeah, the Benders serve as a stark reminder that, the pursuit of freedom and opportunity often came at a high price.
And their story, even with all of its unanswered questions, continues to resonate with us today,
Yeah.
It speaks to our fascination with the dark side of human nature and the mysteries that lie hidden in the shadows of history.
It's funny, I started this deep dive thinking it would be like a straightforward true crime story, but it's become something much more than that.
Yeah.
It's a story about identity, about deception, and the enduring power of the unknown.
It certainly is. And I think that's why the Bloody Benders continue to capture our imaginations.
Yeah.
They represent that dark undercurrent that runs beneath the surface of even the most civilized societies.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with one final thought for you to ponder. What if the Benders weren't just victims of circumstance, products of a lawless frontier?
Right.
What if their darkness was something deeper, something more primal?
It's a chilling thought, and one that reminds us that while we may seek to understand the past, there are some mysteries that may forever elude our grasp.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of the Bender mystery. We hope you'll continue to explore the dark corners of history with us on future deep dives.